All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to How to CAD Almost Anything Disney Edition. This is session 3, and today I'm very excited because finally my Zoom background, the one that you can see right here, will be related specifically with what we'll be working on today, which is the monorail. You also have a picture right here in the front slide. Before we go to, well, this is a plan of what we'll be looking at today, if there's anything remaining. This is more applicable toward the in-person sessions, but essentially we're gonna CAD it's gonna be a toy. Everything that we CAD is kind of a toy anyways, but it's gonna be a model of the monorail and the tracks that you can see in there, and I have a ton of pictures that will be basing this off. This was last time with the scream canister, the Luxor lamp, a bunch of animations, and in fact, one of the last things that we did in the in-person video, so the in-person session video, was trying to make an animation of the Luxor ball. You know, the one in here just trying to follow a particular path or like going up and down and whatnot. And I think I figured out finally how to do that. And it's not difficult at all. The reality is that it's all related to the path mate, and I'm gonna try to do that today. And when I not only make a track for the monorail, it's gonna be like a dual gauge track. That way you can have trains coming in two directions, back and forth. Um, what I'll try to do is like a path mate where you could make an animation of the monorail going around, and that's gonna be pretty nice. So that's gonna be the end objective of today's session. Yes, without further ado, this is exactly what we do. Um, I just a personal story. I did have a train set like this one from Disney. God knows where it is right now. So a lot of the things that I do end up cutting in this project is not only a little just throw back to my childhood, right? But it's also the sort of stuff that if I wanted to get it today, I would just 3D print it, right? So I'll just put a release all of these step files and CAD models open into the internet so that other people that may have gone through a similar background can also utilize these things and 3D print them themselves. All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna stop sharing here. Let's go. Let me go to SolidWorks right now. I'm gonna minimize the screen. So I have a bunch of pictures, as you can see here. I'll start with this one, but just this is a nice one that shows. This is more to indicate how the tracks are gonna look like. That it's gonna be like dual setup. I don't care much about the dimensions because, as usual, we can scale this. But the reality is that I'm gonna eyeball this. We'll give it a shot. Let's see. That's why it's not that way. We don't make it exactly identical to what it's supposed to be. And just an idea of. So I think this is a nice picture to leave it at for now. An idea of how this is gonna work out is that yeah. Well, actually, let me show you this one, right, as an example. You'll see that the wagons, right, and up to here of the main train, it's almost identical. So it's not that we have to cut many unique things. The reality is that the tracks are pretty. The tracks will leave them for the end, and they're very simple. It's gonna take us like 5 minutes. This, meanwhile, it will probably take us like an hour ish or so, maybe two, depending on the level of detail that we go for. We'll go for a pretty decent level of detail. It's just that we'll start with the train right here, and then we'll chop the train like the locomotive right there, right? Or like this, well, this is like the main cockpit, and that gives us one of the wagons. And also making the interface between the wagons is super easy. I've done that before. If you've seen my jetway video, it's also similar to that. So once you've done this, you've essentially also done that after like one 30-second step. So that's why we'll spend a lot of time on the train. And the approach that we're going to utilize for this, surprise, surprise, is concerning we'll employ the master sketch. In other words, I'm going to draw in 2D what I think the monorail looks like. Then on another plane, a little outline of just the overall shape. Maybe not in that plane. I will just get an overall shape of how this will look like. And then we'll start referring pretty much everything from there. And it's single part, not an assembly like when we did the Luxon lamp. Oh, this is maybe a nice picture to leave it at. Yes, right here. Yes, I wanna yeah, this is like the front view. Yeah, I wanna have like multiple views that way. Yeah, this is nice because there's like that lamp right there. We won't be as granular, for instance, with like the wheels as an example. I don't think we need to do that. But that's interesting, right? To have it. Actually, we might. We'll see. We'll see. That could be something interesting to have. I think the version that I have in mind is just gonna be a simple rectangle in there. We'll see when we get to that point. That's super easy to add. So maybe I'll put these two pictures right here next to each other. Okay, so let's start by doing that. Probably this is the point from where I'm gonna speed it up, so you can just enjoy the video from now. But I'll come back at points to explain certain things. I'll definitely come back once it's time to start extruding things. Alrighty. Hey folks. So where we left right last time was here with the overall outline of how the monorail would be looking like. This in here it's a wireframe. This is not just a master sketch, it's also gonna tell us how we're gonna be building pretty much the entirety of this thing. The difference is that from here to here, approximately, it's a nice uniform sweep, or just an extrusion of the way they are. Where it gets a lot more interesting, as you can see here, is in the cockpit. And that's what I've been trying to play around with now. So I built a nice wireframe, as you can see, trying to overall trace the shape of this thing. And I'm gonna come to realize it's a pretty nice looking thing. The reality is that I started playing around with this, as you can see from these two lofts, and I'll show you exactly what I've been doing. I'm gonna actually delete them. That way I'll do them again for all of you. There's one thing that I'm gonna add, which is the following one, where I'm gonna do a little sketch. I can do something that's called a 3D sketch that goes like this. I can do a line that goes from here to there, and then another line that goes. Actually, I'll save that. I'm just trying out something that could be useful, but I'm not sure yet whether it's gonna work. And I'll do another one from there to there. Exit. You know what? Actually, I'm not too satisfied with that, but we'll see. But the reality is, I'll go here to features, then I'll go to loft, and I can say, all right, I want to select that face, and then I want to select this in here, and I can just move this around. It doesn't matter now. And then for guide curves, I'll right click here, I'll go to selection manager, and I'll select individually this line, and that line, and say okay. And then let me see if I can move this around 1 second. Oh, actually, sketch 9 and sketch. All right, I should probably. There we go. I'm gonna do. I think I had another sketch. I'll do selection manager too. Again, in here, I'll do this line, this line, this line, and that line, and say okay. Okay, so let me just see for a moment whether I have sketch 9. The problem with sketch 9 is that it's everything, and I do not quite want all of that yet. I'm just thinking for a moment. But then it's going to be like a regular extrusion. I can do another sketch. Here, I'll just try this for a moment. In what I believe is plane 4. And it's going to be a very simple sketch. It's just going to be converting entities. This, that, and that. And say, okay, exit. Very good. Have to turn this around. There we go. Save. And now yes, I go to loft. And then do our friend over here. There we go. And I can move something around exactly like that. Now yes, I can go to guide curves. I'll select all of these guys. So that's the loft that we have right there. I think it looks all right. Um, I wouldn't say I'm particularly satisfied with this. I mean, it looks decentish. I could impose a couple more guiding curves, say for instance that line and this line. Actually, I can add that one and say okay. I can add this one and say okay. But yes, but it doesn't look as good if I were to do that. So I can just get rid of. The only problem about doing this is that it's gonna add just those two margins that go like that. But that's fine. That is just a product of how we're doing this. The question is this as round as I'd like it to be, right? Because if you look at the picture of the monorail, yeah, it looks similarly. It doesn't look just like it. But I'll leave it like this for now. I think that's fine. In fact, I'll get rid of those two lines. I don't need them anymore. The same thing here in the bottom, right? I can trace this outline and make it go all the way like that. For instance, let's go here to loft. Where is it? Features, loft. I'll click on, see, I think I have an entire sketch, which is sketch 12, very good. And then the one that I want is sketch 11, sketch 9, there we go. Bring it down, and then for guiding curves, I can select slowly all of these guys. So go like this. I'm gonna do selection manager. There we go. That one, that one, that one, that one, and that one. I'll say okay. You see how it's generating a nice curve just like that. And everything is ending up properly where it has to end. So it has this interesting, because of everything ending right there. Well, it has these two interesting lines, right? And we cannot quite get rid of those. That's like a change in curvature. I guess that's what our monorail design is gonna look like. There's other ways to get a little bit creative to get rid of that. But at least yes, this seems to be looking like the front. And if I'm not mistaken, if we look at it, yes, there is that part. I could have made it more curved, but even if I made it more curved, you still have that change in curvature, right? Because there is a clear one right there, and that's what we're seeing right here. And I click OK, and you see how, yes, it's impossible to get rid of that, but well, that's what we have in there. And then like there's other tricks that I want to impose, like for instance, how we do like all of this. For instance, now I can come and say, all right, I'll do say a sketch from here, technically from this face, just like that. And I can be like, all right, I want you to extrude. Oi, actually, yes, from here. I can say convert entities on that face. And I want you to extrude all the way up to, no, here, up to surface. And if we've done everything correctly, these two should be parallel. So we do it like that perfectly. So now we have, I suppose, like the cockpit. And then we do a sketch all the way from here. And we'll say, I want you to extrude. Actually, I haven't converted yet. Let's convert all of these. And let's extrude all the way up to vertex. I'll select one of these, just like that. So then suddenly you have the, I know it's a mess with all of the different lines, hopefully I'll get rid of them, but the last stage in here is perhaps one of the easier ones, which is the following one. I'm gonna, for instance, now do one sketch that's gonna be on this face, and I'm going to convert all of these lines. So this is like the bottom part of the monorail. I click OK. The nice thing is if I edit the master sketch, everything else will just modify accordingly. So that's good. I'm going to extrude up to vertex. That would be here. And then what we have is a design where this goes all the way up. Just thinking for a moment how I'm gonna do this, and I have an idea, which is not too bad. The problem is that I would like these two. I'm gonna do a sketch where there we go. Let me see if I can convert entities. That line right there. And that line. Let's see where that takes us. Okay, so it's a little bit too close to the boundary, as we can see. But that's fine. Yes, and obviously Yes, we'll leave that like that. Um, well, what I want to do is an extrusion of this all the way up to there. And then I'll cut actually even more. I'm gonna convert. It's probably 0.2. Oh no, 20. There we go. I think that's approximately fine. Let's see. I'm curious to see how this this is gonna go. Because yes, that is flat right there, but it's not necessarily flat. Where I want this to go. I go here to features, then sweep. Like I say, I want the profile to be this. Yes, so it's doing that. So let me just save this for a moment and you see. So where does this leave us, right? So leave us, well, the result that looks okay, but it's just not what we're looking for. And perhaps a way to enforce this could be in the way that we made this bottom piece right here. Because yes, it's true that that should approximately stay constant. Maybe it might be okay if this goes even more inward. So I can just go here, edit that sketch, and I want to make this go even more towards the interior. So let me get rid. No, probably let's get rid of that coincident. Let me go. There we go. Let's see. We'll give it a shot. Let's see how this is gonna look like. I'm gonna make these tangent to perpendicular, perpendicular, maybe 15. Let's see. So what is your error now? That loft. Oh, I see. I see. I see. I see. It was just influencing the way this works. It's just that I would have wanted. Okay. I need to edit. Uh, Alrighty, now after speeding, CADing all of this thing, now you can see the end result for the monorail. I think it looks quite decent. We definitely spent a lot of time here at the beginning trying to get the front area nicely representative of what this is supposed to look like. And overall, I think it looks quite decent. Obviously, with the difference in curvatures and how this is supposed to look like, it's all right. I like the detail in the end, last minute decision of adding the wheels. Obviously, this is a model, right? So I could have, you know, finished the wheels properly on the interior too, but this is as a representation looks quite decent. And well, now we're gonna do this to do some very fun stuff. If I'm not mistaken, the distance that I left in there for the beam that is gonna go, that is gonna act as a railway for the monorail is about 30 units. It doesn't matter what are the specific dimensions of this. So that's what we're gonna try to do. And then next up, we're gonna make an assembly of an ice track, right? That eventually we're gonna play. For the one that we'll do in this video is gonna be a very simple track, but eventually on a future video we're gonna build a park layout. Actually, that's gonna be super neat. But the idea today is that we'll make an animation of this thing moving around, which by the way, because of the mates that I added in this that you can see on the last video, actually let me show you here in the wagon. Besides adding this detail, which is like I guess the flexible area that connects the two wagons, I also added like a hinge that is not visible because obviously it's not gonna be quite visible. This is more for me to use. And why am I doing that? Because now when we go to the assembly, I'm able to move this like a snake. There we go. In fact, you see already that one misbehaving. They're all cutting. So in the stretched configuration, everything lines up perfectly. Obviously, in the non-stretched, not quite much. But it looks good. And eventually, we're going to constrain it once we build the tracks. The tracks, by the way, are going to be the easiest part. In fact, I'll go here to new part. And it's going to be quite simple. I'll go here to sketch, front plane. And well, the main inspiration for the tracks, well, we'll do a dual gauge, by the way. So that this is something to have in mind. I'll come back to this in a moment. But it's like this. It's essentially a big line, and there's an arch in there. So that's what we're gonna try to replicate, honestly. So maybe we can make, so 500 units is the length of one of those wagons. So I might make one of these. If I look at the arch, yes, so It's about 3 wagons long. Of course, I'd say 1500 as an example, right? As one of these arches. And it's like building blocks. We've done this in prior iterations of this class where we build like very simple like railways. Yeah, that looks good. Maybe I'm not gonna. Yes, I'll just leave it like this for now. And then I'll add the beam in the bottom that connects everything. So I'll bring this down in here like that, then like this, and I'll make this control and control equal, equal 100, and actually a bit less. I might make that 35. But this is gonna be symmetric, right? We're gonna be putting one next to each other, and that's gonna go like that. Very simple. We can do a radius of 6,000, and this we're gonna extrude by 30. So that's one. So the monorail essentially is gonna go through the inside of this thing right here. Now, okay, what's gonna be fun will be to add like one identical to this one on the side, and then there's gonna be like the beam that connects these. So I'll go here to sketch, maybe on this side right here. Let's see if I can connect like that. Actually, not quite because I have to leave some space for the train to go through. I'm gonna go all the way up to there. Let's say 60 as an example. We're doing the same thing right here. I could mirror this, but it's not so much. So I can just click here. It's not so much work, so I can manually do both sides. Then yes, I will come like that. Yes, there we go. Yeah, I'll make that 25. Why not? Mm, yeah, this and that I want it to be equal. You know what? Actually, I will mirror stuff. I think that's gonna be easier, like this. So now we're doing the straight track. And once we figure the dimensions of the straight track, we'll do the curved track, and then we'll start building something cool out of this. I'll leave that like that. Okay. And here's where we'll probably eyeball the separation, but I'm gonna assume, let's see. So I think the train was like 200. So maybe we can do this about 300. There we go. Mm, mm, mm. Let's say 250 as an example. That should be fine. Over the sketch this face, and I'm gonna convert entities that we're gonna extrude by 30. Excellent, just like that. Perfect. Now we go here to sketch, and we can do a nice, like a nice triangular beam that just centers everything in here. So actually, the way I'll do this is I'll go here to sketch. There we go. And I will convert there. Very good. I'll make it just like this. There's gonna be a nice long beam that's gonna come out downwards like that. I do want that to be perpendicular. This is 600. There we go. a little bit too much, so I'll probably give this 50. There we go. Yeah, we'll figure out the specifics of the dimensions momentarily. Let's see 75. It's the exact same thing in here. 75. I want this point and that line to be no, and that line to be pierced. Same thing over there. Exactly like that. Um, mm, mm, mm. I want this and this one to be equal. Then this and this one to be equal too. And now, yes, we can start adding some dimensions like that 16, 15, and the neck can be 50. And now this could be extruded all the way up to this face in here. Then on the opposite direction, I could say maybe let's make it go up to 15, like that. Since this is gonna be symmetric anyways, right? So you're always gonna have one of these that is gonna be over there. We have this nice beam that's coming out like that. Just thinking. Actually, you know what? I will make this go. If that's up to surface, I'll make this go up to surface too. Or up to vertex, honestly. Up to vertex. Like that. And then you're gonna double up what you have over there. Okay, that looks all right. And let's make half of this base. That's gonna be on this face right here. And that's essentially gonna consist of a rectangle. It's gonna go just like this. Let's make these two equal. Let's make that 50. Make that 30. We can just extrude that by 10. Nothing too fancy. There we go, just like that. And I'm gonna fillet these guys to be 30. Perfectly. Okay. I think that looks good. As a nice starting point, I'll save. I'll call it rail rail 1. Because I'll need it afterwards. Then it's a good point now to create a plane that's gonna act as a mirror between here and here. Right, and here we're gonna mirror essentially here features the mirror that extrude. Oh, I don't know if I want my face. There we go. This guy, and that fillet. Oh, I see. Well, I could, I could mirror the body. In fact, maybe, you know what I'll do? I'll go here to sketch. And I will just draw a big rectangle that goes like this. Linear, linear, wall, opposite direction. There we go. And now, yes, I am just gonna mirror the geometry of the body. There we go. Mirror face right here. Excellent. Okay. So let's see. Where does this take us, right? So I'm gonna go here to file new. Actually, I will go to still to the same monorail assembly that we've been working with. I'll just go here to insert components, monorail rail. Um, and the way that we're gonna do this, oh, let me see. Let me see. I think lengthwise, I like the overall length of this, so that's good. In fact, I can do Control C, Control B. I can bring a couple of these and go here to mate, mate, and then here and there, then here and here. I can bring a couple of these. Right? Oh, that's perfect. Excellent. That is. I like these beams to be looking like. A couple more. Say right here. But we're gonna do a special type of mate with our train, so I don't wanna yet do that. We'll just save it for later. In the meantime, now my first challenge is to see whether the width is sufficient for these guys. So let's bring a locomotive here. And we'll need another locomotive because this one is the cyan colored one. I want to have an orange one. Oh, I think the separation is just perfect. Excellent. Because I can make, say, that face and this face be tangent as an example, right? And then I can make this face and that face tangent. I could have added wheels that went there, but that's okay. Then I can say that I want this separation between these guys to be um, 5. Why not? No, actually, let's say 1. Let's see. Oh, and I should probably click in this guy and fix it. There we go. Oh, I see what's going on. I see there's a problem, which is that I should click probably. This will be a good idea. See if I can make that a parallel. Okay. Oh, fantastic. That is millimetrically beautiful, to be honest. Yeah, so I'm gonna add a couple more details to the beam as well. Yeah, so the trains, I think the spacing is about right. I might come back here. Um, Make that 200 instead. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's gonna be. I mean, that's just the perfect spacing between the two trains. You could probably get it even closer, but I think it's gonna be fine. Yes, in terms of overall look of the beams, that looks alright. We'll still come back here. Just I wanna chamfer these edges. Go like that. That way looks nice and professional. There we go. Maybe I could chamfer here as well. Excellent. Only this side. Let's see. 5 look like. That's right. Yeah, let's still leave it at 2. Let me add those right here as well. Perfectly. Beam in there, beam in here. And now we go back to the assembly. Yes, that's low. Oh, and I can chamfer the base as well. Perfectly. Let's see, actually, hold on. I'm gonna continue adding. All right, that's good. Like that. And I'm gonna chamfer maybe that, because why not? And actually, no, that the interior, I don't think it's necessary over there, but maybe here I could uh, try with these guys. Let's see. Yeah, yeah, that's good. Now, yes, I'm pretty satisfied with the overall look of this. Okay, now I'm gonna save this. Maybe most importantly, I'll change the color. Let's go here to body. I'll make this there light gray. Yes. And we go back to our pictures. Yes, you see there's a nice color difference between all of these. Okay, this is good. Now overall monorail. Now we have to figure out the circumferential version of this. And it has to be a pretty large radius, by the way, for this to work properly. And we're gonna make a nice loop track, and eventually, oh, this is gonna be beautiful. Very very positive outlook on how this is gonna end. But for this, I do need to go to this phase in here, and I am gonna add two lines, as you'll see right now, which will be used later on when we do one of our mates later. But for now, I think I'll leave it like this. I'll click on save. Okay, let me just go over here to the monorail. Yes, I think I'll delete these two locomotives that were around there. So now to make our curved version of this, I am gonna come back here to monorail one, and I'm gonna start by file saving as. So you copy as, I'll call it monorail 2. And I'll click on save. Excellent. Yeah, keep the original open. So the premise for this is gonna be as follows. So we always let's start from here as an example, right? Now, suppose I'm gonna make a circle that goes like this, and now I'm gonna maybe add two radii that come like that, and I'm gonna draw a big circle, right? And this is gonna approximately represent the radius of curvature. The reality is that yes, that this radius in here will probably be a little bit more representative of maybe 4,000, honestly. This is going to be big. But the reason for this is because the monorail cannot turn at a higher rate. Actually, by the way, I should I should move this slightly to the back. It's fine. There we go. Um, want to make this line and that line. No, not that one. Uh, just gonna exit for a second. Our very first extrude was not that one. Okay, no. I do need to figure out for a second. Oh, that's 35, I see. So I need, when we go here, I want this line to be 35 too. There we go. I'll make that coincident perfectly. Um, go. Technically, this line should be. Uh, is it 225? No, that's okay. I'll just draw a center line that goes like this and make these two perpendicular. Excellent, just like that. Okay. So suppose that's our preferred radius of curvature, which is it's a lot, but I think it's gonna be fine. Then I'm gonna draw yet another circle because this is a dual track system, and this is pretty much it. I'm gonna just to get an idea of how big this is gonna be. I'll be splitting up these tracks into fourths. Let's see what all of these guys look like. And I could make, let's see, actually I'm gonna, what is that length in there? That, this line in here is 17. Okay, so that seems approximately right. However, I need that angle to be 22.5, 22.5, 22.5. Yeah, that is obviously correct. So what is this line? That is 1540. That is, oh no, 1650. That's perfect, right? Because it's gonna be about the same length as that. So yeah, so let's give it a shot from here. So the way that we are gonna do this is as follows. For okay, I'm just thinking. I'm gonna. I don't know. I could leave. There we go. Just like that. I'm gonna first make circumferential from here. Wait, that one on the other direction. There we go. I'm gonna have at least this guy being drawn in there, and then I'll just draw the outline of this thing. By the way, I'm gonna get rid of. Oh, actually, I am wrong. I should have done it from there. It's fine. I'll just move everything there. I do not need that line or that one. There we go. Yeah, but that's already half of this thing. So that was my mistake over there. It's just that now that I'm thinking about this, it's a good idea to perhaps see. Okay, so I'm gonna start exiting this. And let me first begin by drawing a line. It's gonna go like this. It's gonna be 35, and if the math is all correct, then this should technically work. Yeah, let me make it go all the way like that. Oh, 300. Then we're gonna extrude through all. Yes. Yeah. Oh, I see. I should have extrude upwards too. Let me, I forgot of that profile in there. There we go. Yes, perfect. Okay, so that's where we were. There, our profile before. Maybe that chamfer right there, I will delete it because I don't think it's gonna be of much need now. But yes, but I'll definitely need this piece in here because I'll go here to sketch, sketch, and now what we'll do is the following thing. I'm gonna go here to convert, and I'll convert all of these lines right there. But not that one. There we go. But up to there. Very good. These are all up to 35. There we go. I'm just gonna click. No, not that one. There we go. Oh, actually, I'm getting rid of all of them. Let me just clear selections and additions for now. Okay, I'll do it slowly. That okay. And I'm gonna add this line that goes in here. Wait, it's good, but at least by making mistakes, you get to see how we go about solving them, right? And that's important, an important part of the process. That right there. I'll finish this up by putting that line in there, that line in there, and all right, let's see whether this works. So if we've done the math correctly, then we could have another one of these beams. I'm using this one as a reference for now. Then we'll see how we actually like actually make use of this. I'm actually inclined to leave a portion of this but still be rectangular. We'll see in a second. But I'm gonna go here to extrude. No, actually not even extrude. I'll make a sweep along this profile. Right, so okay, that one is following it just perfectly because these are concentric circles. So now we got our side. Oh, I should have gotten rid of in here. Let me go. Let's sketch. I am gonna get rid of you here. Something a little through all. Good. And these guys, I don't need them. Okay, so we have part of this is done. Adding then the curvature, that's I think it's gonna be relatively simple if I'm not mistaken. So nothing to be worried about yet. What I'm more concerned about in here, also, I'm gonna look in here. I'm gonna get rid of those chamfers. There we go. I'm just thinking for a moment, like what would be the appropriate way. Also get rid of these guys. And I'll get rid of that too. Oh, oh, it's the mirror, right? I see. Well, I'll figure that one out in a second. Just let me, I'm gonna think for a moment. There we go. I think this might do the trick. So I will still leave this straight as you see over there. It's just that I did a little trick where, yes, so that's gonna come out parallel in there, but that allows me not only to recycle this piece, which is great also by throwing it in this direction, listen, I can add those chamfers again in there. And now, all right, so before we celebrate too much, let's see how we would mirror this. And I think I have an idea of a way of doing this. So I'm gonna create a sketch right here. It's gonna go like this. Essentially, I'm gonna put a mirroring plane over here. And all right, so how am I gonna, there we go. Exit, features, reference geometry plane. It's gonna go right there. Perfect. And what are we gonna mirror? We're gonna mirror that. Let's see whether it works, right? So oh, actually, no, we can do the classic. I think it's gonna be easier. We do. For me, the classic consists of just drawing a big rectangle that goes like that. Dimensions are irrelevant, and I just get rid of half of this. So 700 by something, 900, and I extrude cut in the opposite direction. Boom. I'm gonna hide this, hide that, and then mirror face that, bodies this. Boom. Excellent. So now I have a nice rectangular track in there. So I'll say save. And now before adding too many details, let's see if we can figure out the semicircles right now. Okay, so I'll go here to sketch. Now we need a plane that is gonna be parallel to this. So actually I will bring that sketch again. And we do need, I'm gonna edit that because I'm gonna create a plane in a moment that is gonna go right there. Wait. After that, doing so much curved structures today, this should be among the easiest things. I'll click here on save. And now, here, sketch, plane free. We're gonna convert entities that, and that's gonna give us a nice reference where we are. And then we should be able to do a nice semicircle. The only problem is that I think we did 6,000 on the previous one. Okay, we'll see whether this works. And no, that is not what we're gonna do. We are gonna start from surface like this, and let's see, actually, up to surface. Let's see whether this would work. Oh, wow. Terrific. Very good. And now we're gonna kind of repeat the same procedure, but from the back. I'm gonna actually edit this sketch. So I'm glad that today's creativity is working. So I'll make those two parallel. 400. Exit features. Reference geometry plane. Point and line. We'll go here, sketch. And convert. Okay, so I see this is gonna be slightly trickier than what I think, but if I add, actually no, might not be slightly trickier. Delete. If I convert entities, just that, I'm gonna convert entities. Just did, I think we should be fine. These, I'm gonna make them construction. Then I go here to our usual semicircle. There we go. Smart dimension, 6,000. And let's do the cut. So cut. So now we're using, this is great. So we're gonna start from there and up to surface. Go here. Let's see, does this work? The model does not intersect. Why? Up to surface. Hmm. Could very much be the case that. Oh, now for some reason it worked. I'm gonna hide this. Hide. Okay, that looks good. I'll save. Now let's add a few chamfers in here. Oh, chamfer. Oh, I see, I see, I see. Yes, we're modifying the chamfers, and I'll probably go back to the other one just to be consistent in terms of the chamfers that we have and don't have. Here's the chamfer. There we go. And this is fine. I guess this is just part of the overall method of doing this. Oh, and down here too. Chamfer and chamfer. Excellent. And now just one important step which we will need later is going here to sketch. Well, that face. And we need to do a nice semicircle, two semicircles. That's gonna go like that. Another one that is gonna go like this. And this guy and that one are gonna be corradial. Oh, no, sorry. Let's see. This guy and that guy. I made concentric. Yes, very good. And this guy and that guy concentric as well. Excellent. Now yes, we should be fine. So let's save this. Let's go here to our monorail assembly and let's add some things. So I'm gonna insert components, monorail 2, and we're gonna mate this with here. Let's see, then this with here, and then this and this. Oh, fantastic. And there we're starting to see our curvature slowly forming. And insert component, monorail 2. We're gonna mate this face and this face. Then this face. Yes, that's why I like it that this one at least is straight because it's gonna help us with the assembly, as you can tell right now. Boom. So now, oh my god, this is gonna look so fantastic. I'm gonna do Control C, Control B. These guys came here. I made this and that. So we're essentially building a toy, as you can tell. So you can feel free to 3D print this, use it, have fun with it, because honestly, this might be super neat. I'll just add a singular monorail 1 in here. I mean, maybe I might make it even, because why not? Okay, good. I see. I think I like. just so that I can actually see this. I'm gonna get rid of this and you'll see why in a moment, right? That is because um, I want to make something. Let's see. We're gonna do a circular pattern, or not? Maybe a mirror. Let's see. Mirror components, mirror plane here. Oh, actually, you know what? No, I'm just gonna go back in time. I'm gonna delete that. I don't want that. And just select all of them. I'll do a good old Control C. I'm just gonna mate this face. Actually, no, let's just get rid of that guy. I'll mate this face with that face. No, I'll mate this face and oh no, this should be fine with that straight. So I was about to get scared for a moment. There we go. Good. This one is the one I'm gonna fix. There we go. Now we have at least one of these guys fixed. Control C, Control B. Delete that one. Oh, I don't think I delete. There we go. Yeah, and now there we go. I'm gonna rotate this. Excellent. There we go. And I'm gonna bring this close to here. Okay, perfect. Um, there we go. I'm just gonna mate this face and that face in there, this face and this face and this face and that face. Boom. So now you have a nice little circuit where the monorail is gonna go. Um, so we are almost there, I think. The only problem is that I think that I might I just float it for a moment. I need to figure out whether the open part. I think I may have deleted the sketch that I wanted, so I'll add it one more time. Essentially, these sketches, they are lines that eventually I'm gonna hide, but they represent essentially the tracks where the monorail is gonna be going through. Yes, that's fine. Um, there we go. Uh, uh, mm. Now, a good thing that I could do is go to our friend the monorail in here, and I'm gonna create a sketch that's gonna go like this. Eventually, I will hide the sketch. It's not gonna stay here for that long. That's equal, but I do need those 2 points, and you will see why in a moment. So go here, I say yes, and now I think we're ready. And I'm gonna use this train as an example, like this 6. I'm gonna actually go here to Control C. There we go. I'm just oh, I'm gonna bring one of these guys in here. So I go to mate, and there's a type of advanced mate, as you'll see here, that's called the path mate. Now, first for path selection, I'm gonna go here to selection manager, right? And I'll very carefully, I will go ahead and actually, let me see if I can. No, I think I'll need to do it manually, but that's fine. I could also create a new sketch that could be based on all of this stuff and then hide it. And for now, I'll hide it afterwards. I'm gonna try it like this first. Boom, boom, boom. And then we'll have to do this if we want to have two trains, which that will be the case. Oh, where's that coming from? Hold on, let's see what happens if selection manager. I don't see any line. If this doesn't work, maybe I might go to the offset case. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's go back to mate, uh, advanced, path mate, selection manager, and start like this. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I don't see anything weird yet appearing, so let's continue like that. This is the path along which the monorail will go. Good, good. Nothing strange appearing. That's why I'm zooming out every once in a while to make sure things are fine. Good. Oh, wow, isn't this a continuous group of entities? You're kidding me. I'll try. Let's do here, convert entity. So let's see. No. Hmm. But I do wanna, yes, I do have to select first a face. That's on me. Now, let's see whether is that continuous is my question. I will come back to the continuity question when the time comes. I think it's gonna be easier in the long run to just go like this, then I'll hide both this and the lines that I used to make the original one anyways. Not the biggest fan of making sketches in assemblies, but for situations like this one, it could be useful. There we go. But the whole point of today's video is to get the animation of the train. Good. Oh, so that does seem continuous. So I'm gonna exit. Let me see. I'll go here again to no, do mate. Sorry. Advanced path selection, and we're gonna go to sketch one. Hmm. Okay, I was able to select it finally. And now for component vertex. So I kind of want that point to be one of them. And that's gonna be it actually for this mate. And I think for then I'm gonna further constrain this by saying, all right, I want this mate, this face, and this face to always be parallel. But then I'm gonna do another advanced mate, another path mate, where we'll select, let's see if it allows us to, no, mate, advanced path mate. Let's see, selection manager first. Okay, good. Now for component vector, we are gonna choose the other point, which is that one. Good. Oh, wow. It's gonna, I mean, I know this is not realistic, but the curvature didn't end up so badly. So that's great. I'll click on OK. And now we're gonna continue adding a couple more since these are all connected. And so the reality is that I can go back into PathMate, path selection, selection manager. I'm not sure whether I could get away the component vertex. I could do the middle right there. Right, so I might need to do it on all of the wagons. This is it, folks. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.